This video is all about the structure and the thinking behind Google Ads. So I'll take you through approximately 10-15 minutes of building what has to happen behind the scenes, what has to happen with an ad, and then a website, and then thinking around the market conditions that the customer actually has to sell their services in. So why don't we start at the beginning? Imagine for a moment that you are the person that's looking for, guess what, same example again, a new boiler installation. We have to be able, as digital marketeers, to really understand the intention behind somebody's search terms. So the first step is understanding searcher intent. And if we've got 3 or 4 services to offer, we know that the intent will vary, if not greatly, then slightly for each person. For example, a person looking for services like we provide for new boiler installations won't type in exactly the same stuff if they want their boiler maintained, or in fact if they want spare parts for the boiler. But there are some common terms which I'll come on to in a minute. So the more that we can segment those different ideal prospects, digital marketing speak, they're called personas. So there'll be a persona for a new boiler installation, one for maintenance, and one for people that want to do their own thing by maintaining it by buying bits off an e-commerce website. If we can get really close to understanding those search terms, we can start to build out a series of keywords. And you can see, I know the phrase keyword suggests one word, but actually it's keyword phrases. Even if there's only one word in it, it's called a keyword, or 2 or 3 or 4 words. And again, I've done a video on long tail keyword strategy that will talk about how longer tail keywords with a verb and other stuff inside there will actually indicate more commercial intent. But let's take this example here of a new boiler. We might end up with a list of keywords that will include a verb, buy or install. It will also include maybe a brand and a brand derivative. And it also may include a region. In fact, it's probably likely to include a region because most people who put a region in feel that they want a local provider and it might be quicker. And that brings me on to the final bit. There might be some other value proposition in there around speed, local service, price or value, and that might be one chain. And if we think about one set of words which create a keyword phrase, we might be able to have slight derivatives of those using things like the keyword planner, or maybe changing the verb from buy to install, or, well, you can think of the options. Let's just concentrate on this one for a minute. Because once we've got our keywords, the keywords are there as an intervention between here's what people typed in, here are the keywords which we want to trigger our ad campaign. And that's, regard them as that, sitting silently in the background of an ad campaign, waiting for something like those phrases to come in various types, where we say when that comes in, we want to bid on it because ads is an auction, and we want our ad to be displayed in a particular place or in a particular day or in a particular week. Now that I've mentioned match types, what we've also got to think about is, of these keywords, how accurate do we want them to be when we want to trigger and signal to Google that our ad wants to be considered for returning onto the search engine results pages? Well, this video will cover very briefly the 4 different bidding match types. A broad match is what it says. It's any of those words in any order. A broad match modifier, which is signified by the plus sign, is it can't be a synonym. It can be a near miss, but it can't really be a synonym. And Google is looking at experimenting with that particular broad match modifier. Broad match modifier means it's taken from there and modified it slightly to get a slightly more filtered review. If somebody types in a synonym for install or installations, then they might allow that. Phrase match, inverted commas, because that's what it looks like when building the ad campaign, is a phrase which must remain intact. In other words, it can be anything before the phrase or after the phrase, but within the inverted commas, the phrase must actually be in that sequence, in that order, for a signal to Google to say, when that happens, I'm ready to show my ad. And perhaps the most refined one of all is the exact match, and that's indicated by these square brackets. An exact match is when you want to be considered for only the words that have been typed in. No synonyms, no things that top and tail like you can in phrase match. And that's quite, you can imagine the quality of that. If you get that right, then you can imagine that whilst you may not appear often, when you do appear, there's a higher chance that you'll convert the impression into a click. I'm spending enough time so that if you've not considered AdWords before, you'll be able to get this building block right. So now we've done a bit of preparation, and we've got some keywords, we've got some match types, and this is what we start to do now. When we think about the other products that we've been selling, whether it's been Yell.com or other of our products which depend on specifying who, where and when, it's the same. We're going to create an ad which is compelling and no different. What's compelling about an ad when you can actually say in the top line, you said you wanted new boiler installations in Leeds, and the top line says, we do new boiler installations in Leeds, and there's maybe a problem to solve. It might be speed or price or value, and there's certainly a location and a call to action. Might be call now for our best prices, or fill in a form now, or an instant quote. You can imagine these things which urge people to say, I've read it and now I'm going to take some action. So that ad text writing is really important, and we'll come on to the words that have to be in there have to be quite similar, if not almost identical, to some of the search terms that have been typed in. But again, when we summarize the whole video, you'll see why. We also put in the bidding options. Do we want to spend that daily money that we've allocated over 30 days? Is it Monday to Friday? Do we want to spend it as soon as Google opens for us? If we want to set it open at 8 o'clock in the morning and we've got, I'm making it up, £100 and it's £1 a click, do we want to say the first 100 clicks we want to be alive and be seen, be returned up to Google? The danger of that is if your campaign has spent your £100 in that particular day, then it's closed until the following day. And those why we can set different bidding options. One's called enhanced bidding or accelerated bidding, the one I've just talked about, and then the standard bidding. If you've got a 10-hour day and you've got £100, it will give £10 equally to each hour. And again, let's use a simple, if it's £1 a click to pay for the ad, you'll get 10 clicks in the first hour. And if that first hour is between 8 o'clock in the morning and 8:15, after those first 10 clicks, guess what? You're not live again, or potentially live, until 9 o'clock when it'll open again. And there are varying combinations of that, which we can talk about in a later video when we look at advanced options. Just like we do when we're setting any campaign which is filtered, we can start to say how much do we want to spend, maximum, and I'll come back to maximum when we look at pricing in another video. What time of day? Typically businesses that open and want to take a call really want that ad to be available just before they open and more or less when they close. It wouldn't be kind of a waste of resource, wouldn't it, to run an ad right the way through when the shop's closed and there's nobody there to answer the phone. It sounds obvious, but I've seen this happen a number of times. If it's a form that's being completed and people are considering that new boiler overnight because it's cold, then it may make sense to run that campaign till midnight to capture the leads which are ready in the client's inbox for the following day. Setting radius and our region, same again, is how do we want to concentrate and dilute our spend? The wider the radius, the more the region, and the finite budget will be thinner and therefore won't get as many clicks for that particular campaign. And we could go on and on and on about building the campaign, and that's something that our colleagues do when they're building out those campaigns. So what have we got so far? We've really concentrated on searcher intent. We've segmented into the various types of requests from different marketing personas. We've got really close to those keywords that suggest commercial intent, and then we'll start to include those in the preparation to build an ad campaign. And now we're ready to go to the next stage, which is to structure an ad campaign. And let's again think about Google Ads for a moment. The structure of the campaign should mirror what we've already done with our keywords regarding each marketing persona. So if we've got new boilers and boiler repairs and boiler parts, we will have a campaign that will be either by boiler repairs or boiler reparts, or in this case I've slightly switched it to show you what's possible. You could have a campaign that says we're interested in the campaign being around a city centre called Leeds, and ad group A would be for new boilers, ad group B would be for boiler repairs, and ad group C would be boiler parts. Can you see how there's some thinking that goes into that? And the same if we did Doncaster, we'd have the same mirrored down here. So it's a discussion with your client when you do that. And then for each group of ads, we have 2 or 3 ads, at least 2. Good campaigns have 3. And the reason for that is you can play now with the call to action in that very important in those few words. It could be call now, it could be a quote, a discount in November, and you'll see which one actually triggers the most impressions and click-throughs, and then you might decide with a third ad to continue to rotate a low performing ad out, and then again when you rotate an ad back in, you'd replace that one. So that would be kind of Google's advice on best practice of circling ads and watching Google very closely to see which one performs the best. Now, all this happens, the bidding is kind of latent, it's hidden, it's behind the scenes. The structure of the campaign, not yet visible. The campaign itself, not yet visible until you press go live. And the moment somebody types in a search term which triggers a keyword, which for the right money Google says, do you know what, I've only got 7 spots, I've got 4 at the top and 3 at the bottom. I, Google, now have to decide if I choose your ad versus anybody else's ad. And there's a whole combination of things that go on. I'm going to I'm just going to slow this down a little bit and spend time talking to you about the importance of relevance and quality score. Let's do that now. If you're Google, you want to be able to return highly relevant, commercially intended results for your customers. I'm talking about if you Google. Now, how would they know if they're relevant? Well, they can measure it. When an ad's shown and it's clicked on, the frequency with which it's clicked on shows Google that a higher click-through rate means probably higher relevance. And so Google rewards over time, it will measure a click-through rate and add that towards the quality for that particular keyword, for that particular ad and for that particular event. And so the quality score is a combination of how much money you're prepared to bid, what's the relevance and quality of your ad over time, and here's the next bit I'm coming to. What's the website structure and the relevance and therefore quality of the website structure when it's about to send your ad to somebody, to the research pages, somebody clicks on it and goes to your customer's landing page. This is the relevance link. Let's just go through this. Search terms go in. Keywords trigger the search terms. Ads are actually created with those words in. Campaigns then go live, potentially to send people to a landing page. And that link between there, and there, the link there is to show that there is content in the search term, the keywords, the ad, and the landing page that shows Google, I'm pretty confident that if I send somebody through to a phrase that says new boilers in Birmingham for a Bosch C500 with a trust score of X, and then on that page it says we do installations in Leeds for the Bosch model, derivative, whatever it is, and by the way, here's our trust scores from recent purchases, Google's going to go, great. And quality score, that's QS for short, is a key factor in determining the price that people pay and also the position of prominence that they have, 4 at the top and 3 at the bottom. I'm going to do another video completely on quality score to look at that auction process, and it kind of tries to even out people. No matter how much money you've got, your money isn't going to buy you a position. It's relevance for that particular search and inquiry. And finally, as we think about the big picture around building out an ad campaign, we're thinking about the 3 C's. Just think about it for a minute. What would be the point of having any campaign if the customer or the prospect that you're talking to has actually no capacity or no desire to increase capacity to actually fulfill the new inquiries. Look, I know it sounds obvious, but that capacity question, which has taken us well through the ages of Yellow Pages, Yell.com, other solutions, is still a stable and required question. It is. What do you want? How much more business do you want? And have you got the capacity to service that business? So that would be the capacity of the individual. And maybe that's, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a bit here, but maybe that's what they can do. They can say, look, I haven't got it now, but I'll grow. I'll put another team into Doncaster or Sheffield or any of the other regions. This capacity is, what's the capacity in the marketplace to actually take that product and service anyway? And then there's some research that can be done around that shows you that there's a fair amount of market share yet to be had. And actually, when we run an ad campaign, the great thing about the data behind it is we can show in something called Auction Insights who's who in the zoo. Where are you in the race to get those keywords triggering an ad, impressions and clicks and conversions, and where is your competition? Invaluable data. So I always think of ad campaigns or Google ad campaigns as doing two things. One, generating leads, generating calls, generating those kind of actions, and at the same time building very valuable data to actually shape and form how you go about beating your competition, what more you need to do, or what else you need to do, either as a promise on the web page, which is how people choose you, or how you get found by operating in a way which makes you stand out. So that's that capacity. The final one I've already mentioned is the competition. Is what are they doing? What can you do, not necessarily to beat them? I mean, this idea of beating people is kind of like it's a race. It's not. You all exist in the same pool. It's about surviving and thriving. So you wouldn't, as a boiler installer, want to take on British Gas. You'll never match their budget. But what you want is a fair share and an earned share of the market that wants a personal service, maybe that particular boiler, the extra USPs that you provide that a big giant doesn't have. So understanding the competition is the climate in which you operate for building out this whole campaign. My next video will talk to you about how to price ads and help to set the right budget based on different bidding practices. And then there'll be a further video showing how you can spot gaps in somebody's existing ad campaign, maybe that's being run in-house or by another agency, so you can actually call to account. Maybe there's some opportunities missing. Slightly longer than my previous videos, but I hope you found that useful.